This is a story of how an author's genius destroyed a perfectly good series. And here it is where it just becomes so ridiculous. Every single book has had something that has just annoyed me quite a lot, but that is like off the charts in Books of Babel. I'm just letting you know it is some of the most unsatisfactory answers to a series I've ever come across. Now, I'm not a person that enjoys ranting, which is why I waited more than a week to make this video, because I really wanted my thoughts to settle before I started talking about this book. I really need to vent about the conclusion to the Books of Babel by Josiah Bancroft. Now, if you don't know anything about the series, it's absolutely fine. This video will be totally spoiler free until the very end, and I'll make it very clear when we get to that point that we're now talking about spoilers, but most of this video is going to be totally spoiler free. And in case Josiah Bancroft, if you're watching this, just please click away now. But before you do, I want to let you know that I do think you are a genius and you have a beautiful writing style and your creativity is off the charts. And I'll probably read your next series, to be honest, even though I really disliked the last book in the series. But please click away now, Josiah, if you're watching this. So what are the Books of Babel? Why have I read this quartet? And why do I feel so angry after having read the fourth book, which is called The Fall of Babel? I'll add a book cover here. Let's just firstly talk about some good aspects about this series. And I've actually done a full discussion about book 1, 2 and 3 with Philip Chase, Library of Alexandria, Over Average Ben and Grace Dion. You can find them on YouTube if you want to hear my full spoiler-filled thoughts about each book in the series, except the fourth one. We haven't done that one yet. But I was so excited about the series because so many people have told me how innovative, how fresh this series is. When it comes to being fresh, this is truly a fresh fantasy. I mean, and the reason why I mention this is because a lot of my favorite series, like the Greenbone Saga here in the back, or the Sword of Kagan, are series or books that just feel like they bring something new to the genre, and that always makes me excited. And a lot of people said I should check out this one because this is truly fresh. So what is the overall spoiler-free synopsis for the series? We basically follow in the first book Senlin as he and his wife travel to the Tower of Babel, this mysterious large tower for their honeymoon. And very soon after he arrives at this tower, the wife disappears and he just can't find her. And this tower is not your regular tower. It is truly the most crazy, unique thing I've ever come across, almost in fantasy ever, because what I find so unique and refreshing about this series is that this is an epic fantasy, but it all takes place in a building. Yes, it's epic, takes place in a building. So how does it work? Basically, we have this tower here, right? You can see it on the map, and this is even the full one. You can see there's more levels above, and each level in this tower, it's almost like a big village or even a small city. Like each level is just, it's one of those that it's actually almost bigger on the inside, or that's at least what it feels like. And each level is so different. So we encounter different cultures, different ways of how people think about things. It is truly so unique. Now, the other thing I love about the series is the writing style. Josiah Bancroft's prose absolutely slaps. I mean, he is such a talented wordsmith. I mean, so many sentences in the series are just beautifully written. So again, Bancroft is a genius when it comes to that. And the third thing I loved about all 4 books in the series is the handle of themes. Bancroft provides a lot of commentary on capitalism, oppression and stuff like that, and it's done in such a weird steampunk, almost absurdist setting, but it works. So again, let me emphasize, I think Bancroft is a genius, but I think he might just be one of those authors that feels like he has too many ideas and he needs to cram everything into all of these 4 books. I just have to admit, it just doesn't work the further you get into the series, in my opinion. Let's go through all 4 books. It's going to be spoiler free, just so you get an overview. So the first book, we follow Senlin. It's a single POV plotline where he loses his wife and he tries to find his wife back. And based in this one, we see Senlin, he goes to a couple of the different levels and goes through so many hardships. It's basically horrible what he's going through, and the plot is just very riveting in a lot of ways. My main criticism here is that I didn't find Senlin that complex of a character. I just felt he was quite 2D, and also Maria, his wife, I didn't really feel invested in the love relationship. But otherwise, I could see so much potential because, as I said, it's an epic fantasy set in a tower. It's just so unique. But didn't give it 5 out of 5 stars. I think gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I thought it was a solid, fun introduction. So then we come to The Arm of the Sphinx. I don't have a physical copy here, and in my opinion, this is the best book in the series by far. It is here that we start to explore more of the side characters. The tower starts to feel even bigger and bigger, and Senlin, he starts to feel really well realized. He starts to feel complex. I really started rooting for almost all of the characters. I mean, and the plot also is just more compelling. We learn more about the tower. It is so intriguing. I think I gave that one 4.5 stars. That book has like a hit for what is to come in book 3 and 4, which in my opinion are just books I didn't really enjoy. Because at the end of book 2, there's suddenly like a 50-page section where we suddenly don't follow Senlin anymore. We follow some of the other characters, and I was like, this is quite weird because it's been a single POV kind of story up until that point. But suddenly Senlin, he's just gone for a while, and then he comes back. But I was like, 50 pages of like, okay. Feels like at that point that Josiah Bancroft, he wants to maybe introduce the story and make it more like multi-POV and stuff like that. And I wasn't really sure if I was on board with that, because in this book here, we're kind of introduced to a story, and it kind of feels like, okay, we know what the series is gonna be about. But in book 2, we kind of get hints at maybe Bancroft, he doesn't want to write this story here for like 4 books, which it kind of makes sense because it maybe would have been a bit repetitive just to follow this single like POV and stuff like that. But I was like, I'm not really sure if I'm on board with not following Senlin, because we've been doing that for 2 books, and it feels weird to now introduce other POVs, if that makes any sense. And it is here that I need to mention there is a character called Adam, and at the end of book 2 he disappears, and as a reader we get to see what happens to him and stuff like that, or at least like we know he disappears, right? He's not Senlin, he's not the main character, but it's important because I'm gonna come back to this character Adam. Then we come to book 3, and this is where I feel like Bancroft's genius or creativity, it just goes too far and it just doesn't work at all. So what is so unique about this book? Now, instead of like your typical epic fantasy where you balance between the different POVs and you go through, you know, a regular fantasy, like you have one chapter of this POV and then one chapter of this POV, this book starts, the first 200 pages approx, we follow Senlin, and he's not with this main group now, so that feels quite familiar. But then from around page 200 to 400, we follow one other POV single-handedly. We only follow this one POV from page 200 to 400, so we literally have no idea where our protagonist went from page 200 to 400. And then from 400 to the end, we follow a third POE, which is also again quite separate from all the other ones. So suddenly we have a story here in book 1 where we totally follow Senlin, and then in book 3 Senlin has almost become a side character in his own fantasy series. And I know for some it might be exciting, especially if you enjoyed the stories we follow, but for me I was like, I signed up for book 1 and 2, we follow Senlin. Senlin is now like gone from his series almost, and it just didn't work. Again, it's a well-written book because Josiah Bancroft is a genius, and as a reader you have so many questions about the tower, but it just doesn't really work. And then we come to the Fall of Babel. I've given it 1 out of 5 stars, and it's not necessarily because it is badly written. If I have to judge it on my satisfaction, it is arguably the worst conclusion I read to a series in my whole life, and it's still spoiler free, so don't worry about that. But I need to talk to you about the structure of book 4, and that'll probably give you insight into why I think this is it is so unsatisfactory in my opinion. Even though this is an overall good and exciting series, I will find it very hard to recommend other people to pick up the series now, because The Fall of Babel is just one of those books that is so ridiculously frustrating. I hope you notice now that with every single book in the series, I've had that feeling that it could have been a 5 out of 5, but with pages, we follow this character that we haven't been given any like proper reason to care for. It's just like, what is going on here? What is this conclusion? The other thing is that, in my opinion, Adam's point of view it was just so boring. Like, I didn't care for it at all. I wanted to get back to Senlin because we're now at the conclusion of the series, and it gets even worse. When we finally get away from Adam's single point of view, we still barely know what happened to Senlin. He's almost gone from his series. It's just like, what is the point? There is no way that Bancroft knew how he's gonna conclude the series when he wrote the first book, and in my opinion, it almost feels like Bancroft started to hate his protagonist. Like, it's gonna be quite hard for me if someone tries to convince me otherwise, because like, why would you start a series with following Senlin for book 1 and 2, and then gradually in book 3 and 4 you just remove him from the series? I mean, it absolutely baffles me. And in book 4, I don't have a physical copy with me, the story is like almost nothing like what we were introduced to. It's taken into a wild direction, and For me, it just did not work. Now, the most frustrating thing about this series is that in book 4, Josiah Bancroft, he doubles down on all the questions we have about the tower, and he introduces this character. In my opinion, doesn't spoil anything. He introduced a character called the Bricklayer, who is like a mysterious character that we know probably built the tower, and there's so many questions about who is this Bricklayer, what is the purpose of this incredibly weird and massive Tower of Babel, who built it, why was it built, how does it work, who powers it. There are so many questions, and throughout book 4, Bancroft, he keeps focusing on these questions, and as a reader we feel like, okay, at least, well, Senlin is gone, that's alright, but at least towards the end we're finally gonna get answers to all of the questions we have about this massive Tower of Babel. And in my opinion, the only way the Fall of Babel could have been a very solid book, because I was so annoyed that he removed Senlin from the story totally, is that if the revelations at the end were very satisfactory. Now I have to get into spoilers now, because I need to talk to you about what the tower is and the answers Bancroft provides to all of these questions he's built up. If you don't want to get spoiled before you leave, I'm just letting you know it is some of the most unsatisfactory answers to a series I've ever come across. It literally feels like it's one of those Deus Ex Machina. Josiah Bancroft, he just had no idea how to finish a series, so he's like, I'm just gonna invent something so ridiculously crazy and unsatisfactory. But at the end of the Fall of Babel, we have some questions. We want to know who is the Bricklayer, and at the end of book 4, do we know? No, he doesn't answer it. Do we know why the tower was built? No, Bancroft never even properly answers that. And then here it is where it just becomes so ridiculous that it made me so angry that I literally had to go online and read about, like, did I understand the ending correctly? Because surely I could not have understood what happened in the ending of book 4 properly. We're basically told that at the top of the Tower of Babel, there is a spaceship going to travel somewhere for 2 years. We're being told there are 7 other towers. We don't know why, but we know there's 7 other towers. And now the top of the Tower of Babel, we're gonna travel somewhere. We don't know where, but the Bricklayer probably has some huge master plan, because there's 7 other towers, so 8 towers in total. Do we know anything about these other towers? No. Do we know where the spaceship is going? No. Do we know who the Bricklayer is? No. Do we know why the tower was built? No. Now, I don't really mind usually not knowing the answers to some of those questions, but when you as an author, you constantly build up towards this big reveal, and then you just invent a spaceship and you just say, like, they're gonna travel somewhere for 2 years, and then you just leave it. That is so unsatisfactory that it literally blows my mind. Like, it feels like Bancroft, he just like, I don't want to write this novel anymore, I don't know how to finish it, I'm just gonna invent something ridiculous. And it just made me so angry. And again, it's totally spoilers now, but when we finally get to the resolution between Senlin and Maria at the end of book 4, the book started with Senlin and Maria, and it also ends with Senlin and Maria. It baffles me, like, oh, it made me so mad. For some reason, and I do not think that it has been properly justified, Maria still has like really like hard feelings towards Senlin. There are some things that have happened here now, but Senlin basically is not almost allowed to see his own daughter. Well, I mean, he is, but it's almost like Maria's like, no, keep your distance, Senlin. And I just was like, why is there such a like wall between Senlin and Maria towards the end? Again, I don't mind having that conclusion, but I really feel like Bancroft did not justify Maria's feelings towards Senlin enough, and it just is so frustrating. Basically what I wanted from book 4 was I wanted to have answers to all of these questions Bancroft raises. And my problem is that instead of answering any of the questions he constantly focuses on, he just invents something so crazy. And the other thing is that I wanted a resolution to Senlin's character, and in my opinion, that is like not a resolution at all. It is so frustrating to see how Senlin grows from book 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, and also how Maria grows, and then at the end we just have this like wall, or like they're definitely like not in a good place, and it just baffles me. It is the most frustrating conclusion I've read to a series ever, I think, because the first 200 pages are boring. The rest of the book focuses on all of these questions about the tower and stuff like that. None of it is answered, and then the main character's arc is just so unsatisfactory. I I just can't believe that Bancroft decided to finish the series like this. It breaks my heart. I had so high hopes for this series. I really enjoyed book 2. I also enjoyed book 1 quite a lot. And then from there on, it just feels like Bancroft's creativity and genius was just too much, and he just took too many risks. Now that being said, I will probably give his next series a try, because as I said, but Bancroft's prose is incredible. His genius is incredible, and the way he handles themes is just so well done. But hopefully he stops taking this many risks, or I don't know. I still think that a lot of you should try to give this series a read, because it's so fresh, it's so innovative, and the writing style is brilliant. But yeah, just be prepared. I mean, book 4 has a high star rating on Goodreads, so I'm probably in the minority here, but yeah. Sorry for ranting, I just need to talk to someone about this series. I'm very sad that it concluded this way. Thank you so much for watching to the end of this video. Now, if you want to support what I do here, then I do have a Patreon. Now, a reason why I created a Patreon was to find a new way to reinvest to the channel, because basically since I created my Patreon, I spent around 100% of my earnings to hire an editor to do a couple of videos for me a month. Now, since creating my Patreon, an editor has done more than 20 videos for me on my channel, so it makes a huge difference. Now, if you join my Patreon, you will also get some benefits. For example, you'll get a name in my videos like these guys. You'll also be able to join the exclusive Viking book club where every month we read one book together, and you might be the one to put the book forward. This month we're reading this book, and next month we're reading this book. You also get to vote on my next read, get access to exclusive videos like a wrap up or even book reviews, and so much more. But this is totally voluntary, but all support is much appreciated.